So good afternoon, everyone. We have a pretty tight schedule, so while people are joining, I will already start with some introduction. So welcome to this session about GitHub Copilot. So first of all, let me explain why I like giving this session. Is that I have some colleagues and other developers that I know that feel a bit shortchanged when they first try out GitHub Copilot because they don't go further than discovering the code completion function. So my goal for today is actually show you that GitHub Copilot can do a lot more than simply the code completion that you see immediately. Who am I? My name is Koen. So I'm a coding architect at Xebia, Belgium. I've been a consultant for over 16 years now, mainly in Microsoft development environments. I live in Harelbeke in Belgium. That's in West Flanders for people from Belgium that called in. And I live there together with my wife and 2 daughters. So, and if we talk about developer productivity, one thing that comes to mind with the developers themselves is the developer flow or getting into the zone. So as developers, you already know that it's a bit of a public secret, but actually we only get to spend a very small portion of our time doing actual coding or coding new business features. So things like meetings, having to coach colleagues or peers, production issues, searching the web, preferably in a work context. All of these things cause us to get distracted. And actually, when we start coding again, trying to get back into the zone, we have to refine our train of thoughts to be productive there. So our time spent coding is very precious. So it's very important that we try to get in the zone as easy as possible. So developer productivity is all about staying in that flow. It's about, basically, you could put it as simple as saying it's not leaving your IDE, your development environment. So your Visual Studio Code or your Visual Studio or whatever IDE that you are using, because we know once we look away from our IDE, is it to talk to colleagues? Is it to ask help through mail or to search help online? From the moment we do that, we might get distracted and actually not getting the help that we are wanting or not the focused help that we are looking for. So staying in the flow, it's also about making sure that more mundane tasks or repetitive tasks that we try to automate them. So things like writing tests, trying to figure out what commit message you want to put in place for your colleagues or for the history of your Git history, basically, or writing documentation. These are the things that, we know we have to do them, but it's not part of being productive typically for a developer. So if we can automate these things as much as possible, then we can stay longer in the zone or in the flow. So as I said earlier, it's also about getting context-aware help. And context-aware help, what I mean with that is that, say, for instance, you ask a colleague about a certain problem that you have. You say, okay, I am trying to do this, but can you help me figure out what the solution would be for that? If you have a colleague or somebody online that states that for every problem that you present them, that microservices is the solution, but you're actually working inside of a monolith application, then you're not getting context-aware help. You're just getting more questions than answers, right? It's also about getting these solutions and even suggestions for improvements. If you are developing and you're starting, you're working in this into the flow, and you're starting to question, okay, is this the best way to do something? And you have something that automatically says, okay, I see you're trying to do this, but if you thought of that, it might be even better. That can also help us be more productive again. And last but not least, also access to documentation and leaving documentations for the people that come after you. is actually also something that will help you in the long term to more easily be productive while developing. So GitHub Copilot actually promises to solve all of these things that I've listed there. And if you look at the tagline from GitHub Copilot, so your AI pair programming, I actually find it a very smart tagline, because a pair programming, for people that have experience with that, in pair programming, you have two roles. You have a driver role and you have the observer role. So the driver, he's the one that basically is writing the code. He's the one that's using the keyboard. But you have the observer, and that's the one giving extra instructions, thinking about the application strategy, thinking about security aspects, and basically thinking about the bigger picture. So by doing that, you can be productive as a pair programming team, because the person that's typing doesn't have to constantly consider these things. He just has to do what he's being asked. And that's the same thing with GitHub Copilot. With GitHub Copilot, you're the one that makes the decisions. You're the one that still needs to distinguish bad from good code. GitHub Copilot is, in that case, the driver. He's just the one that's doing the typing for you. So it's a very important thing to keep in mind. You as a developer, you're still responsible for the code that gets generated and that in the end gets committed and released to production, right? So the AI part of GitHub Copilot, it's about large language models. GitHub Copilot is based on ChatGPT 4 now, but it's actually specialized in answering questions for code. So it's not a normal ChatGPT 4. It's specifically to be used when coding. So if we talk about an LLM in a nutshell, I will try to explain what an LLM is in 5 sentences, and probably minimalizing decennia of research by doing that. But it's just to give you an idea what is behind this, so that you also know what the limitations are. So large language models are actually machine learning models that are trained on vast amounts of text. So in these texts, so documents on the internet, public information on the internet, text consists of words. So these words, or even partial words or characters, they are tokenized. Tokenization means actually that they are giving coordinates in a multidimensional space. Then in these texts, these words or these tokens, then they are being combined by what we know as sentences and paragraphs. So these sentences and paragraphs are connected, are connecting the tokens in vectors. That's what they mean with embeddings. And these embeddings, they give semantic meaning and context to these tokens. So when you prompt an LLM, you're actually providing it more context so that it can give you a meaningful response. And the response itself is, again, a sequence of tokens that it generates. So it's new content that it generates for you, but it does that by predicting what's the highest probability for the next token in a sequence would be. And that's what they call inference. So like I said, GitHub Copilot uses a ChatGPT 4 model under the hood, but it is fine-tuned to work with code. So this is an example. Don't have that much time to go deeper into it, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. I have some colleagues there ready to answer these questions if you have them. So in the explanation of LLM, we also talked about prompting. So where in the past, a developer skill, whether we liked it or not, was to be able to make good Google search queries. We have to be masters in Google to find the right answers on Stack Overflow or other places. Nowadays, a developer, a skill that is uprising and gets more and more important is prompt engineering. You really have to learn how to properly prompt if you want to be successful with using an LLM like GitHub Copilot. So for prompting, there are 4 basic principles that you have to keep in mind when you're using an LLM. So the first one is your task or your question that you want to ask. It needs to be a single task or a single question, because if you ask multiple things, then your LLM might get confused or does not have not enough space and it's or not enough tokens to give you the right answer. Also, you have to be specific. So if I ask, okay, I want to create a class, but you're not specifying that it should be in C#, Java, Python, or whatever language that you are using, then the LLM will just guess what it thinks that you want, but it might not be what you want. So it's better to be more specific about what you want. So specific, the next one is short, and it's, it sounds a bit like a contradiction actually between specific and being short, but again, the more information that you put into your query, the more it can get confused actually in what you're actually trying to do. So try to be to the point and give it enough context, of course, as to the surrounding part to have it answer in the right direction or in the right context. So the surrounding, one thing that you can do there is also provide examples. And these examples, you have three flavors of that. And the first one, the zero shot, is actually providing no examples. The second one is to provide one example. And then the next one is actually multiple examples so that your LLM can work based on that. So for that, I will give a small demo on this prompt engineering. So for that, I will switch to Visual Studio Code. I hope my license, come on. Okay, should be okay. So in Visual Studio Code, if you can see my screen, I just opened Visual Studio Code. Inside Visual Studio Code, I have Copilot that is acting weird for some reason. Let me see. There's an issue with the internet. Let's see if it does something. So I will start by asking it to create a new class for me. And I've copy-pasted actually a statement for that. So I will ask it to add a class to create a Pi object. And it needs to contain an ID, a human readable key, a name, a description, a category, and a creation date. So I didn't write any code here. I just asked it to do that and create this class in C#. And as you can see over here, more or less what I want, okay, I can accept this and all the properties are there. Nothing too fancy there, but now I can start iterating on it. So what I actually want to do in my class over here is, for instance, the category. I want to say, okay, this category, that's now a string. I would prefer that to be an enum. So I will select that. I press Ctrl-I to get the context menu. And there I can actually use a slash command, and I say /fix, and that's a slash command, one of the slash commands. Make the category an enum, generate 10 values, and some of the examples are fruity, nutty, cheesy, and savory. So when I start doing this, see actually it does exactly what expected here. It adds some more things that I didn't prompt. So that's also the large language module that is going on there. And if I would enter, that's the completion feature that's going on there. So nice. Huh? Oh. So what I also want to do is the human readable key in this case. I don't want that to be a string that I have to define myself because I want it to be unique. So what I can do over here, and I will use the examples over here. So let me copy paste that real quickly. So what I'm saying here is, okay, I want you to create a function that generates a unique key for the pie, so the pie object. The input is I have an apple pie, it's a fruit, and a certain date, and I do that for a couple of pies. And as the output, that is actually what I want. So normally, yeah, and there it goes. By doing this, so by giving examples, not stating that this should be the first three letters and this should be something of the category and this should be a date. Actually, Copilot is smart enough to figure that out based on the context that I provided with the class itself, and it's actually able to provide this code. Of course, if you see this, it's doing too much in this case. It's splitting it and then doing substrings. These things you can by yourself simplify, so you're still in control here. But it's very nice, at least, that by just giving this, so you could even get from your business people a certain statement. This is the expectation that I have, and you can actually generate code based on that. All right. So let me save this file. Let me go to where did I put this? Let me name the file. All right. Now what I can do now is actually do another statement, and I will use the chat window over here. And I can say, okay, dear Copilot, create a model class for sandwiches. So the cool thing, what we see over here, is actually that it takes into account the example that I gave here. So the pie class, because it's open in my, so it's added to the context automatically. I will explain in a minute how that works. But it's actually able to say, okay, I understand what you're asking, and a sandwich, a pie, both food. So you also want a class for that. I will do it the same as you did over there. So it's automating actually the repetitive work in this case. Even took into account the key generation that we have over here, and also the category. Again, it generated some categories automatically based on what's known in the LLM. So if you want to use that, you could say, okay, I want to insert that into a new file and yada, yada, yada. That's how that works. All right. So that's a small demo on prompt engineering. Do a quick time check. So how did Copilot work behind the scenes? So basically, Copilot, it's a service that runs, it's a plugin that runs inside of your IDE, in my case, Visual Studio Code. And it actually, when you ask it to do something, it tries to build this context so around the question that you're asking. And automatically what it does, it will try to look at the method names that you're working in, or the function names. It will look at the class names. It will look at the surrounding files that are open inside of your IDE, and so on and so forth. It will use that context and securely send it to Azure, and more specifically, GitHub-owned tenant on Azure. So important, this securely sent. The first thing that it does before it starts using the model itself, it will do some filtering. So first of all, it will check, okay, do you have a license to use GitHub Copilot? Because it's a paid feature. But the filters also will remove any abusive language. It will remove personal identifiable information that might be inside of your code or in your context, and other types of filters, even security things that it will check, it will remove it, and only then send it to OpenAI, to an OpenAI service running inside that Azure tenant. So the LLM will do its magic. It will generate a response. And then again, it passes again through that proxy that will do again filtering based on the answer that the LLM generates. We know that the LLM is also trained on public repositories on GitHub. So again, it will remove personal identifiable information. It will do security filters to make sure that we don't introduce any security risks in the code that it has generated. Again, this abusive language, sentiment analysis, all of these things will pass through it. And also an important one, it will do an open source duplication detection. What that means is actually that GitHub Copilot, when it generates new code and it resembles too much code that is available on GitHub or other sources, that it will actually say, okay, I can't give you this because this might cause an issue with a certain license of an open source project, or it might cause the fact that you are delivering intellectual property for a certain customer, and they say, okay, but this is exactly what's on GitHub available for free, so we don't want to pay you. That's to counter that thing, actually. And then in the end, after the filter, it will generate the code for you that you can use inside of your project that you are working on. So pretty clever. Important also for the GitHub business licenses and up is that it also removes your prompts. So it keeps them in memory, of course, to do the call itself to OpenAI. But after that, it's removed and the model is not trained based on the code that you are providing or the context that you are providing. All right, so what do I need to get started with GitHub Copilot? First of all, I need a GitHub account, and it can be a free account, it can be a business account. You just need an account, a GitHub handle. But next to that, you also need a separate Copilot license. So it's not something that is included for free. You have to pay for it to use it, because LLMs are still relatively expensive, and that's actually a way to contribute to that model. And last, you also need one of the supported IDEs. So you have Visual Studio Code, what I'm using. Also different IDEs from the JetBrains family, like IntelliJ for the Java people are also supported. We have Visual Studio itself, of course, and then NeoVim for the people that prefer to work in an editor like that. So from a license point of view, you have three options. So you have the individual license, the business license, and the enterprise license. All of them doubling in size, in cost, I mean, the higher you get. So the higher your license is, the more features that you get, of course. But just know that the individual license itself, one of the things why this is not suitable in a business context is that this license actually uses your prompts to train a model. Business licenses, like I explained earlier, don't do that. An enterprise license, of course, also not. Just remember that, if your CISO of your company knows about this, he won't be too happy to allow that. And so you will need a business license to work in a professional context. From a feature overview, let's just quickly compare business and enterprise license. So the code completion thing that everybody probably knows about now, but there are other features there as well, and I will try to demo as much of them as possible. And then on the enterprise side, so paying double the amount of the business license, what you get there is integration in github.com. There's also the integration is mainly about chatting with repositories inside of GitHub. So you can chat with your pull requests like it's stated here. If I have time, I can show you this. But what it comes down to is that in the context of a pull request, you can use chat to ask, okay, what's going on here? Is this the best way? Can you generate a pull request summary for me, and things like that? And so that is a pull request body generation. Also, the thing about being able to chat with knowledge bases. So if you go to one of the popular open source libraries, for instance, NPM, for instance, you go to that repository in GitHub, you can basically use their knowledge base that's inside of their GitHub repository and start asking questions to chat to that as well. So pretty neat. Something that is also introduced is to integrate with the search engine. Of course, GitHub is owned by Microsoft, so this is Bing, this is not Google. And what's nice about this is that an LLM itself, an LLM always has a certain cutoff date. So when the model was trained. So if your model was trained like a year ago, and you're starting to work on a .NET project using .NET 9, then the model will not have information about .NET 9 specific things. So by adding this search engine to it, it actually can go and look on the internet and try to find the answers there. So pretty nice. And then the last thing, the fine-tuned models. This is actually a feature that's mostly interesting for very large companies with very large code bases, because you can train GitHub Copilot or fine-tune the model based on the repositories that live inside of your organization. So if you then are prompting to it, it will take into account all the knowledge that it gets from other projects to do certain suggestions to you as well, and that are in line, of course, with the rest of the rest of your code base. All right. So I will give you a couple of demos also about these features. Let's see how far I can get. And for that, what I actually did, if I find it over here, I will use a repository, just a project, a proof of concept project that I created even before I created this presentation. It's something, it's a proof of concept to show how clean architecture works in combination with Azure. There's some bicep in there and so on and so forth. So what I did in this repository, I actually created a GitHub code space. So the Visual Studio Code that runs on a VM of GitHub. And I apparently have to restart it because I wasn't active on it the last couple of minutes. Starts up pretty fast. Or should at least start up pretty fast. Back into the code space. There we go. Now, what I also did there is install the extensions for GitHub Copilot, and automatically GitHub Copilot chat is added there as well. So as you can see, the project is just loaded as you would do when you clone it locally. So the first thing that I want to do, because say that I'm new to this project, it's a legacy project, I'm a new developer in the team, perhaps even other developers that were in the team already left. So I'm a bit puzzled, okay, all of these content, what is this about? So that's also something that GitHub Copilot can help you with. And what I will do is actually use an agent, so that the @ sign in this case, and I can say, okay, workspace, what is this project about? So it's fetching the context, filtering out some information. And then what it actually does is, okay, I see that this is a project that appears to be a clean architecture implementation in .NET. It recognizes that. It gives a bit of explanation on what clean architecture is. It discovers certain layers that I used, and so on and so forth. If I scan through it quickly, what it did miss in this case, if you look at the project, it is true that this is a .NET project in the source folder, but I also have SQL statements. I have bicep files in there. So there you see that the context that it can build for an entire, it can include the entire repository when it builds that context. So sometimes you have to be a lot more specific and give it a little help there. And that's all due to the token limitations that we have with every large language model. All right, but I'm actually interested as a developer. I see a SQL file in here, and hey, what is this about? So what I can do over here is select these statements. I see, okay, some statements are repeated over here. Let me just ask Copilot to explain this. So you see it's not only Java and C# and all of these things. It can also interpret other languages like SQL. And basically it says over here what it does. I'm not going to read it out loud. It's a relatively simple statement. Basically explaining that I'm trying to create a user and add it to roles. But I see something strange over here. I see this placeholder identity. I'm not sure what that is, but okay, let's ask Copilot about this. What is this placeholder identity actually? It's like the name suggests, it's a placeholder and it's something that should be replaced at runtime. Very interesting, but okay. How would I be able to do that? So how would I be able to replace that when I'm using a GitHub, when I'm using GitHub Actions and a GitHub Action pipeline? Again, in this case, it even suggests me this is how you could write your action. And it has a certain script that it runs here, set I, and so on and so forth, basically replacing that inside of the file itself. So very nice. And I'm actually not sure, is this also workable for Windows containers? Because an agent can run both on a Windows and a Linux container, and I can ask that as well. And then it might or might not, because it's always new content that it generates, make a suggestion that actually works on both of the container flavors. All right, very nice already. Let me clear the chat and let's do some other things. So another thing that I want to show you is integration with the CLI. So what I can do, and I will use another agent, the @terminal agent in this case, so that's the @terminal. I will just ask it randomly, how can I build this project? All right, it actually gives me, it is a bit of a surprise for my scenario that I have in mind, but it actually gives immediately the right answer. It says, okay, you have to do a .NET build, and it points to the solution. So what I will do, okay, just answer that or add that to the console, but you will see if I execute this, that it will work because it's the source directory. So in the past, what it used to do is actually just say you need to do a .NET build. So let me do this as in this case as well. Clear. So it actually learned already that it should look for the solution file itself. But say scenarios it didn't, and it just said, okay, you need to do a .NET build. And we know that this is not going to work because I'm not in the source folder. I'm not pointing to the solution file, so it doesn't know what it has to do. All right, but even there, I can ask GitHub Copilot for some help, and I will say, okay, this error message that I get here, explain this to me. And it will, of course, explain what you have to do. You have to go to the right project and so on and so forth. What I can also do is say, okay, I just want to build one of the projects in there. And that for that I can say, okay, at terminal, how can I build? And then I can do a file reference. So I select a file if it wants to cooperate. File. It's okay over here. And I will search for the program.cs file that's existing in my UI.web project. Ask it a question. And there it says, okay, you have to do it on that build and reference the correct project. All right. So now what I can do is go to the source directory, to the clean architecture.ui.web project, where my program files live. And there I can finally do my .NET build. So what you can see also, it will take some time to build in this case, but there are a lot of warnings in there. And we all know that as developers, we want to clean up these warnings, even though they're not exceptions. Yeah, it's a good practice to remove all of these warnings. Let me wait a minute while it builds. Right, it's finished. So for my script, I have selected a certain warning that I am trying to find. This one. So there's actually a warning that says, okay, you have an async method, it lacks the await operator. Say that I'm not that familiar with these concepts of async and await. Again, I can ask for help. So over here as well, I can again say, okay, Copilot, explain me this. What is this CS 1998 about? And it will explain to me, okay, you have a method that's defined as async, but it's an await operator, so this will run synchronously and so on and so forth. Oh, and apparently it failed to answer in this case. Let's try that again. There you go. Yeah. All right. So this error, I know where to point to, and indeed, in this case, it's just something that's not implemented. I'm not planning on implementing it immediately, but I would like my warning to be removed. So what can I do about this? Let's ask Copilot and say, Copilot, fix this for me. And what you will see now, it will generate a certain fix, but it's actually not doing what I wanted to do. It's actually, I just want the warning to go away. I didn't ask for an implementation of this. So let me try that again. We'll use Control I again. And I will say, okay, fix. But I only want you to fix the CS 1989 warning. And there we go. Immediate result, what I want. It actually removed the async part and would fix the warning for me anyway. All right, so the next part. So let's say, okay, now I want to implement the edit method. So I'm in a documents controller. The documents controller is an MVC controller. As you can see from the create part, it will return a view and then return to the post method to do the actual work. Say that I want to implement the edit method, but I don't feel like writing it myself. We can actually try and ask Copilot to do that for us. Let's see what will be the result. So I will use the chat window again. And what I'm specifically looking for yeah, so it gives me a suggestion, but it's basically not in line with the create method. That's also something that happens sometime. It did, however, knew that I am working in an MVC context, so it also generated a view for me. So let's try that again. But let's select the create method. So I will select this one because I actually wanted to use mediator in that case as well. So by selecting this, I create an extra context. And hopefully now, you never know, it's always generated again and again. And in this case, again, it shows that it's also using mediator for this implementation. So very nice. So that is something that I could say, okay, I want to inject that into my editor. Not going to do that now, let's skip that part. But it basically copy pastes it or puts it at the cursor and overwrites whatever that's selected at that moment. So again, very nice. It's repetitive work that is being automated for me. Again, still my responsibility to double check if what it's doing is correct. So for the next part, another feature that I wanted to show you. So this one was the code referencing that I showed you as the code documentation. And for that, I will use a different class. So I will use a Web API class for this. Also a documents controller, but this is a Web API controller. And you see actually over here, yeah, it's not commented. Also, that's something that we can try and automate this. I have to say that when I was trying this out again yesterday as a preparation for this, that I had some strange behavior. So let's see what will happen here. So I asked it to document it. All right, let's accept this already. And as you can see, what it does, it actually creates this XML type of documentation, summary, controller for managing documents. It also documented my constructor, but as I had before, it didn't document my my endpoints themselves. So let's remove the documentation that's there. Do not try to confuse it. And let's say, let's try to document this one. And this is where I get strange behavior sometimes, like now. What you can see, it actually is documenting the endpoint that I selected. So retrieves a document by its unique identifier. It tries to create a summary. It recognizes what the parameters are and the return value. But the strange behavior in this case is that it basically deletes the rest of my class, which is not the most helpful way for GitHub. So that's a bug that we will have to report to them. But there, again, it's still needed that you know how .NET works and how MVC and all of these things work. So we can do that manually ourselves as well, and even use the code completion feature in this case, which will have the same result for us. All right, what else is wrong with this method? This is basically a get method that tries to find something by ID, and people familiar with this type of code know this is not the best code because it lacks the fact that if it doesn't find the document in this case, that it will not give the right return values. So what we can do there, again, we go to the chat. I will select the method over here to give the context, clear some stuff up. And I can say, okay, workspace, fix selection, and maybe I should select the entire thing in that case. Fix it so that it returns the relevant status codes. But there, very nice what it does. Okay, I know this type of code. You're trying to get a result by ID, but if it's not found, I don't want to return a document. I want to return a 404, not found. And then in the case that it is found, I want to return an OK result. Very nice. Huh? Completely automated for me. But people that used to work with, that are familiar with working with this, and they have some Swagger documentation, know that although I have a 404 error that I return and a 200 that I return here, it will still not return, in my Swagger documentation, it will just say, okay, it's always a 200. So what we can do there is also ask GitHub Copilot for help, because I know that this is something that I have to fix in Swagger, but I don't know how. So let's just ask it. And it says, okay, what you have to do over here is having this produces response type. Let's inject that. And again, I knew it had to be done, didn't know how, and it was done for me. So again, very, very nice. Let me do a quick time check. Another thing about these mundane tasks is about unit testing. We all know that it's needed. I know very few people that like to do unit testing. And again, it's something that Copilot can help us with. So I'm in my controller class. I selected my my controller itself, and I can say, okay, generate me some tests for this. Up. Now what it will do, you see over here, it uses popular frameworks. So it's using XUnit as a test framework. It uses MockU for mocking. All right, very nice. But it's actually, yeah, I don't want it like that. I'm used to work with fluent assertion, so I will not accept this. Let me close this for a minute. Don't save. And I will try again. So I will say, okay, Copilot. And instead of clicking generate tests, I will start the control I feature again, so the editor, and I will say, okay, tests, but use fluent assertions. And normally, yeah, over here you see it is using fluent assertions, so it updated the code for me. And from there on, these tests are being generated. I could say, okay, save this to a new file for me. So let's say documents controller tests. Save this, and we're good to go. Very nice. So now, okay, I did some changes. Let me accept this also. I did some changes, but I suddenly realized that I'm actually working on my main branch instead of my master, instead of a feature branch. So yeah, I have a bit of a difficulty understanding all of these Git or remembering all of these Git commands. So let's ask Copilot again for help on how I should switch branches. I say, okay, at terminal, how can I move my changes to a new feature branch named feature demo? Click enter, and it says, okay, this is actually the command that you would need, get checkout B feature demo. Let's execute that in the console. Up, and you can see that actually my branch was changed. From there on, again, I can work with the normal plugin, or I can use the Git commands like I want to. But let's open the source control feature of Copilot over here. And a very nice feature that they added is to generate commit messages automatically for you. If you click this one and it says, okay, refactor document controller methods, I can click it a couple of times. And it should actually give me another message. Okay, factor documents controller to remove not implemented and update get methods and so on and so forth. Say, okay, I'm happy with this, or I can adjust this based on what it's suggesting, but let's say, okay, let's commit it. Yes, all right. And then what's left to me is to push the changes. Oh, hello. My newly created branch. Then let me do a quick time check. I will give one more demo because now I did a commit. So I could actually create a pull request. So this is an enterprise feature. So my pull request, normal pull request window inside of GitHub, it recognizes that I did a change on that I committed a change on a certain feature branch, and I want to add it to main. But the nice thing that I can do over here now with this expensive feature is say, okay, Copilot, generate me a summary. And this is something that can take a while sometimes. There you see it. It's very thorough in this case. It's much more text than you get from the commit message. And yeah, it basically explains what's going on there. So again, very nice. I can create my pull request, and from there on, I can start also chatting with my pull request. So I can say, ask Copilot. It asks me to select a certain context. And I can again say, okay, explain going on here to me. I can, of course, add more targeted questions that I'm doing now, but yeah, I think you get the idea what's going on here. So this will help you in your Git flow with your team. Also, when you're doing code reviews, even you can use this chat feature then to understand what your peer colleague did inside of the code base. Yeah. All right. That's all that I have time for now for demo parts. So some more explanations. So as I said, GitHub Copilot, it's a very nice product, but it's not a silver bullet. So it has its limitations and also some pitfalls that you should know about. So GitHub Copilot is trained on publicly available repositories on GitHub itself. So yeah, not all of these repositories contain the best code. So from a security and vulnerability point of view, GitHub filters out certain things, but there are always things that can pass these filters and yeah, cause security vulnerabilities inside of your code base when you generate something. So again, it's your responsibility as a developer to be aware of that, and you still need to know your métier, like they say in French. Yeah, you're still a developer. It's not something that can be outsourced completely to a large language model. Also, we have a size limit. So for the prompt, there's a limited amount of tokens that we can send with every request. The prompt is the context that GitHub Copilot itself needs to build with all of these things surrounding your code that you're trying to do something with. And of course, your question itself. So that makes it also that you can't say, okay, this is an entire repository. Yeah, take that into account. There's just too many files. It can check the file names and try to create a context around that, but it can't pass the content of every code file with it when asking questions. Also, an LLM is good at predicting words, like we explained, but it's not good at computation. So asking questions about doing code coverage and things like that will just not work or will not have the response that you required. There are some things like asking an LLM how much is 1 + 1, and it actually returns 3 or things like that, because it's not, yeah, reasoning about this, it can't do any computation. Also, with the coming of ChatGPT 4.0, speed is improved a lot. But in the older models, when they were still using 3.5, they had to find a balance between finding a good answer and having a speedy enough reply to the developer when he's using, for instance, this code completion feature. If you have to wait a minute for every response there, that's just not workable, and then you'll stop using it. So they had to compromise there as well, and that may cause that the answer that you're getting are not always as optimal as you want. Also, from a developer point of view itself, again, I'm repeating myself, but you are still the developer. You have to know how to develop code. You have to be able to distinguish bad code from good code, from quality code. And last, there is also learning GitHub Copilot. There is a certain learning curve to it, where we can help you with if you're interested in that, to get past this simple code completion thing and even more features than the ones that I showed you in this short webinar. So if you're convinced and you also want to convince your management, a lot of companies, especially the more regulated companies, are a bit afraid of AI. And they'll say, okay, but our source code is our intellectual property. There is potentially personal identifiable information in the code. There are secrets in the code. All of these things that we just don't want to share with the evil company named Microsoft. So what you can say to them, okay, there is a thorough document on github.com for the trust center, like they call it, that addresses a lot of these issues. So first of all, with the business license and the enterprise license, as I said before, your prompts and suggestions, they are not used to train a model. They are being sent to the tenant of GitHub, but everything, once the code generation has been done and the filtering has been done, is deleted. So there is no trace of these prompts and suggestions. On the other hand, user interaction data itself, it is stored, but that's more for tracing purposes. When something goes wrong, then they can actually see what happened with between the user and the tenant, but not in the detail that they can see PII and other stuff like that. It's more logging for error resolving that they do there. This I also explained. So the PII and security issues are being filtered. This intellectual property protection, so the open source duplication detection that's going on, all of these things are actually things that concerns that are addressed by GitHub itself. So you can read it in a lot more detail on this webpage if you get any questions about that by your management. And then last, if you need help with this, at Xebia, we have a lot of people that are specialized in GitHub and in this case, more specifically Copilot. So we have a couple of offerings that we can help our customers with. And that really ranges from some training, on-site training with some follow-up for single teams up to really a scaled rollout within an organization where we will train multiple teams and help them get the most out of this project. And that's it. If there are any questions, I will hang around a little bit more in the meeting. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions if you have any. Yeah.
So I see we have a question from Chris. He asked what type of data is used to train GitHub Copilot and how does it avoid suggesting sensitive or proprietary code? So the type of data that's being used is actually everything that's publicly available on GitHub. That's what the maining training was done by that. And how it avoids suggesting sensitive or proprietary code is it looks at the licenses. So I think it's from the moment you have 150 characters as something that is proprietary, it will stop suggesting that because the 150 characters is the legal limit that you can have. It's for more to come. It's in there in that Trust Center link that Koen shared to have more details, but something like that.
Right. Thank you, Frederik, for answering that one. If there are any more questions later on, yeah, just do a reach out to us at Xebia. It will get to the right people, and leaves me to thank you for your presence, and hope to hear about you soon, starting to use this or starting to experience the benefits of it. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.